Hello everybody, hope you're doing well and thanks for joining us for another video. On many of the videos that I've done regarding the moon landings, I inherently seem to receive comments from people pointing me to a conspiracy film called A Funny Thing Happened on the Way to the Moon by Barts Film. It's 47 minutes long and almost a quarter of the film is taken up with one claim that the TV broadcast that Apollo 11 did on July 17th, 1969, whilst they were en route to the moon, was said to be done at around 130,000 miles away from Earth. But according to Barts Film, it's apparently in fact done in low Earth orbit.
It cannot be misconstrued that this staging was done for some other reason prior to the mission, for the reel itself is slated and dated July 18th, 19th and 20th, 1969, the very days of the mission when they were said to be approaching and achieving lunar orbit. Furthermore, it is apparent they are in genuine zero gravity aboard the actual spacecraft, necessary to convince the mass media of their authenticity, just not any further than Earth orbit, as you will see.
And they never went any further than this, they just created the false impression that they were further away than they really are. Kind of like a 1960s version of Atlas VPN, because that allows you to create the online impression that you're actually further away from where you really are by rerouting your data through any one of Atlas VPN's numerous servers around the world. This can be very handy as some websites load different versions of their site based on the location they think you are in. So by changing your perceived location, you can control what version of a website you receive. Best of all is that with just a single account, you can install Atlas VPN on as many devices around the home as you like, whether it's Android, iOS, Windows, Mac or Fire devices. Sign up today using my link in the description and you will not only receive a whopping 85% off their 3-year plan, but you'll also get an extra 3 months included free, and all with a full 30-day money-back guarantee in case you're not completely satisfied. So let's first take a look at what the conspiracy claim is.
Though the federal government would have you believe that this is a view of Earth from a distance out of the spacecraft's window as it nears the moon, it is not. What they have ingeniously done is placed the camera at the back of the spacecraft and centered the lens on a circular window in the foreground. As they perfected the shot, a crescent-shaped piece of black material was inset slightly into the window to create the illusion of the Earth's terminator line dividing night and day.
So the basics of it is that Apollo 11 apparently isn't 130,000 miles away from Earth zooming in on the whole thing, but is instead only a few hundred miles away in low Earth orbit, and the command module window has been covered up, apart from a small circular cutout, to create the impression that the Earth is just a small circle in the frame. Well, at least they've acknowledged that they are actually in space rather than in a studio. But straight off the bat, there is one glaring flaw in this argument about it being done in low Earth orbit. If you watch any footage from a spacecraft in low Earth orbit, such as the International Space Station or Apollo 9's EVA, you can see the Earth moving across the frame pretty quickly, because they are orbiting at over 17,000 miles an hour and are relatively not that far above the surface. So if we were to cut out a circle of Earth from some of that footage, this is what the Apollo 11 footage should look like if Bart's claims were true, but that's not what we see. In fact, you can see the entire 35-minute broadcast from Apollo 11 on YouTube. I've linked it down below. It starts with a view of Earth through the window, then after about 10 minutes they switch to showing inside the spacecraft, and then they wrap up the transmission by going back to the window and viewing Earth again. Now here are 2 screenshots from that transmission, one taken near the start of it, and one taken about 30 minutes later near the end. And you can see the same cloud formations are still in view, except if this was in low Earth orbit after 30 minutes, they'd have been 1/3 of the way around the other side of the Earth. Instead, we're not only seeing the same cloud formations and land masses, but we can also see they've moved slightly in that 30-minute gap. Exactly what we would expect to see from a rotating globe viewed from a great distance. There are also then claims of audio conversations in the footage which apparently show proof of deception.
Here they discuss that these television transmissions were in fact not broadcast live as everyone believed. They were first screened and edited for playback later.
Roger, Neil. We just wanted a narrative such that we can, when we get to playback, we can sort of correlate what we were seeing. Thank you very much.
Understand, too, that only about 20 seconds of this raw footage was ever broadcast to the public, and these conversations discussing their deception were believed to be private. Until now.
Now, with regards to the notion that they thought they were having private conversations, none of the conversations were thought to be private because they were not only being picked up by multiple ground stations around the world, but also ham radio operators could freely listen into the radio transmissions at any time. This was, however, an unscheduled broadcast in the sense that the TV broadcast at 34 hours into the mission was one that was planned well in advance to occur at exactly that time so that TV stations could work the coverage of it into their schedule. However, the crew could also use the cameras to broadcast unscheduled transmissions at any point, which were always picked up by ground stations and relayed to Houston, which were done if they wanted to show Houston something there in particular, or they wanted to check the equipment. Fortunately, the entirety of Apollo 11's radio transmissions are logged and available online to view, so we can get some context to these conversations outside of these cherry-picked snippets the film is presenting. The film is basically covering two different transmissions. The one which took place at 34 hours, which was the scheduled TV broadcast, and one was done the day before at around 10.5 hours into the mission. At 10 hours in, they are stated to be 48,000 miles from Earth, and Buzz Aldrin, the lunar module pilot, is commenting about the view of Earth and being able to see the snow on the mountains in California. At 10 hours 20, Houston advises that Apollo 11 can begin its PTC, or passive thermal control, which puts the craft into a slow rotation. Armstrong, however, responds at 10:22, saying they could delay the PTC by 10 minutes to broadcast some video footage of Earth, and Houston agrees. At 10:25, they confirm that Goldstone Station in California is ready to start receiving a broadcast signal from them, and at 10:32, Armstrong advises Houston that they are broadcasting to Goldstone. Houston then states on several occasions that they would like 10 minutes worth of TV footage of whatever the astronauts feel like, and some narrating for the exterior views.
We'd like a narrative if you could give us one on the exterior shots. We also suggest you might try an interior position, over.
Which Armstrong then gives a lengthy description of the parts of Earth that are visible to them.
We have not been able to visually pick up the Hawaiian island chain, but we can clearly see the western coast of North America, the United States, the San Joaquin Valley, the High Sierras, Baja California, and Mexico down as far as Acapulco and the Yucatan Peninsula, and you can see on through Central America to the northern coast of South America, Venezuela, and Colombia. I'm not sure you'll be able to see all that on your screens down there.
After which, Houston responds by stating that they wanted the narrative so that they could correlate what they are seeing.
Roger, Neil. We just wanted a narrative such that we can, when we get to playback, we can sort of correlate what we're seeing. Thank you very much.
I.e., be able to cross-reference Armstrong's description of what he's seeing to the video footage so that they know exactly what they're looking at within the footage. Now, if this was shot in low Earth orbit, they wouldn't be able to see California and Venezuela at the same time. Overall, Barts Film covering this makes many wild claims without any real evidence to support them. For example, it makes the claims that an earlier broadcast view of the Earth is the view through a circular window.
What they have ingeniously done is placed the camera at the back of the spacecraft and centered the lens on a circular window in the foreground, outside of which it is completely filled with the Earth in low orbit. This is because the Earth's shine is coming in at a downward angle. It also causes the Earth to appear to be an irregularly shaped circle, for you are seeing the outside of the window at the bottom and the inside of the window at the top, which together form two different sized halves of a circle.
However, the view that we are seeing is stated to have been shot through window 1 of the command module, which is the side window on the left side of the craft next to the pilot seat, which is a square window, not a round one. The only round window on the command module is the one on the hatch above the seat, and even then, only the interior of it is circular. The outer window is still square, so none of them would be able to create this double curved effect that Bart is claiming of an exterior and interior window frame blocking different parts of the Earth. Even more so when we consider that for that effect to even work in the first place would require the camera to sit in a very precise spot looking through the window. Except we can see throughout the broadcasts, the cameras are always moving around. And if they had round windows, it wouldn't actually matter anyway, because if you start looking through a round window on an angle, both the inner and outer parts of the window would distort, so you'd get more of an oval. And you can see on the EVA of Apollo 9 what the Earth would actually look like through the command module window if this was taken in low Earth orbit. The funny thing is though that Barts Film focuses very heavily on those two broadcasts. The one unscheduled at 10 hours 30 and the scheduled one at 34 hours. However, there were other broadcasts done during the mission, such as another unscheduled broadcast at 30 hours and 28 minutes, so about 3.5 hours before the main TV broadcast, which from the transcripts looks like Houston wasn't expecting because there was no previous mentions of it, and then they informed the crew that the Goldstone station was receiving a TV picture from them, to which Armstrong responds that they were just testing the equipment, presumably to make sure that everything was ready for the upcoming broadcast. This transmission goes on for 24 minutes, includes a part of Michael Collins trying to do some exercise to see what his heart rate would be doing in 0G.
Ever learned vigilant? Hey, you got any medics down there watching heart rate? I'm trying to do some running in place down here, and I'm wondering just out of curiosity whether it brings my heart rate up.
But Bart's claims about showing the Earth through a cutout in the window weigh very heavily on statements that the astronauts made about blocking the other windows to keep the cabin dark.
Here they discuss the fact that they have turned out the lights and have blocked out sunlight from entering the spacecraft through the other windows as to not cause any reflected light to fall onto the spacecraft's wall in the foreground.
Okay, very good. Well, we shut out the sun coming in some of the other windows into the spacecraft, so it's looking through the number 1 window, and there isn't any reflected light.
But during this broadcast, the windows are uncovered, with sunlight being able to get into the cabin. And towards the end, we once again are shown a view of the Earth. However, on this one, when it zooms out, we're able to clearly see the window frame and the interior cabin, whilst the Earth is still in view. No covers or cutouts anywhere to be seen. Furthermore, the fundamental reasoning that Bart seems to have for this whole faking the distance of Earth is the claim that they couldn't get past the Van Allen radiation belts,
depicting the Earth at a distance, in order to falsely demonstrate their far journey from it, and their ability to survive passing through the Van Allen radiation belts.
even though the animations that he himself is using shows that the belts are like donuts around the Earth, with clear paths to just go around them, which is essentially what Apollo did. However, if Apollo 11 had to stay in low Earth orbit and fake the view of Earth, then I would question how he explains Apollos 8 and 10. Apollo 8 orbited the moon and took the famous Earthrise photographs in December 1968, and in May 1969 Apollo 10 did essentially a full dress rehearsal for Apollo 11, travelling all the way to lunar orbit with the lunar module and doing a powered descent down to around 50 miles above the moon's surface before returning back. And on the return journey to Earth they did a broadcast at 147 hours and 23 minutes, in which not only do they show a very similar view of Earth through the window, but they then move from one side of the command module to the other to show a view of the moon. And the moon looks much larger than the Earth. Yet we can see the edge of the window frame in the shot, which gives us some sense of perspective that this isn't a view of the moon from all the way in Earth orbit. And if Apollo 10 had made it that far, there's no reason Apollo 11 couldn't either. Anyway, I think that's going to draw this video to a close. As always, let me know your thoughts in the comments below. If you've enjoyed this video and you haven't already done so, then please consider hitting the like and subscribe buttons, and then hopefully we'll see you in the next video.